Hello and welcome to my fantasy romance recommendation video. I would probably call these ones my favorites at this moment in time. I wanted to give you a list of recommendations that weren't Sarah J. Maas or Jennifer L. Armentrout, and don't get me wrong, I stan both of those people. I love ACOTAR, I love From Blood and Ash, however, they just get talked about all the time, so I figured we would show some love to some other fantasy romances that I think should be on your radar. Let's get the most popular one out of the way, because this one has been blowing up this year, but I feel like it still doesn't get the love it deserves, and I need it to, which is the Crowns of Nyaxia series, or The Serpent of the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. Honestly, I love Carissa Broadbent. I've read everything that she's written so far. This one is by far my favorite, and it's just absolutely incredible. This is a vampire romance, but set in a high fantasy world. Like, it is a brand new world. We're not on Earth. Vampires are not what you expect. They have some of the basics of vampires, but the lore around vampires is so much more than what we typically get in a vampire society. I would almost say that they're vampire and fae combined, and I really, really liked that interesting and unique take. In this one, we're following our main character, Aurea, who is the daughter of a vampire, but she's human. She was rescued when she was a kid by the vampire king, and she doesn't really know why he rescued her, but he has grown to love her and has taken care of her all of her life. However, she's a human living in the vampire world, and that can be dangerous. So in order to protect herself, she needs to enter the Kajari. The Kajari is this competition that happens that is run by the goddess of death herself. In this, it's essentially like the Hunger Games. It's like a fight to the death to be the last one standing, but there are different like trials that happen throughout the experience that lead you to having one person left. You have to work in teams at sometimes, you have to work alone, and sometimes like there is a lot of interesting trials in this, which I love a good trial setting. Winning, however, won't be easy. Goddess of Death is the vampire goddess, and it is a competition full of vampires. She will be the only human in it, and she has to use her skills that she's learned from the vampire king and just growing up within this world as a human and trying to survive in order to survive and be the winner of the Kajari. This, I think, made an interesting story for me because she was already an underdog, and I love an underdog story. I was rooting for her to see how her brains would help because she obviously is weaker than the vampires, and it did not let me down. But enter our love interest, who I'm not going to tell you much about, and I love and adore him because there was such good banter within this story. Like, if you love good banter, this is the story for you, because it is enemies to lovers, but I would say it's more like rivals to lovers, and there is just such good chemistry between them that you feel their relationship so much. And this story also really has incredible themes of like grief and losing oneself and finding one's identity and stuff within the story, and it's incredible. Carissa Broadbent has the most magical writing and lyrical writing, and I love this one. Like, I don't understand how people don't love it sometimes. Like, I'm like, what? It's just an incredible experience from front to back, and the second book is also just as good in my opinion. So yeah, if you have not read The Serpent of the Wings of Night, this is top tier fantasy romance in my opinion. If you love banter and enemies to lovers and just a little bit of spice, this is completely slow burn. It does have spice in it, but there's such a slow burn that the spice moments are rare, but they're like such a tease throughout the story, and they kept me like wanting more, and it was just the perfect level of slow burn and angstiness and everything for me. Incredible. Chef's kiss. Please read. Let's do a less popular one, but one that actually just got picked up and was pubbed traditionally like literally 2 weeks ago at the time of filming this. A Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden. I feel like I don't see enough people talk about this, and this book was so like magical for me. I like really had a fun time with this book. This one, the world building and stuff is not as strong to me as like Carissa Broadbent. However, this is a debut. This is not. And so I think that Kate Golden will continue to grow in her world building, and it was still really good. Like, it was still really good, but I had so much fun within the story. And again, it's enemies to lovers. There's so much fun banter. I have a type. I literally have a type, and if my type is your type, pick this book up, because like the fun humor and the banter was so incredible in this. That had me feeling so many strong emotions for our characters throughout this. I was really rooting for them, loving them. I really had an incredible, immaculate experience, and I think all the besties will too. In the story, we're following Arwen, who is a healer. She has a magical ability to heal, but she keeps it hidden because she doesn't want people to know. But when her brother gets himself into some trouble, she ends up saving her brother's life by offering herself up and her magical healing abilities. She ends up being taken in order to save her brother's life by the Onyx King. The Onyx King is rumored to be this big bad and savage and not care about everyone, and so going into this new nation for her and experiencing it is really terrifying because she thinks she's going to be like really brutally taken care of and experience no care or tenderness, and she ends up as a prison for this king. She does, however, meet this other prisoner within her time there, and he's feisty and cunning and doesn't seem to care about everyone, but Arwen starts to like trust him, but trust is not something that she should be giving in a land that she knows no one in, and she has to trust him in order to help herself escape these lands. And this was just thinking about this makes me so excited for the second book. The sequel comes out soon, A Promise of Peridot. I literally cannot wait. I loved my experience with this. Again, just a wonderful, wonderful time. I had so much fun, and I think that it does take some familiar fantasy romance tropes, but add something to it, and I really just loved our characters quite a bit. The next one is a chunky boy. We have Blood Mercy by Villa Roth. I have read books 1 and 2. I have not finished the series yet. I wholeheartedly love this experience with my entire life. This is not my like typical fantasy romance for sure. Like, I'm normally an enemies to lovers girly, and this is just like friends. This is friends to lovers. Like, there is no rivalry, there is no enemies besides that they come from different species that aren't supposed to get along. And this is not full of fun banter, but however is just like these cute cinnamon roll moments throughout the entire experience that like made me just go, oh my god, all of the time, because they're so freaking adorable, and Leo is just like, he's so cute. Let's tell you what this is about and not get so distracted. Blood Mercy is I would say is like an actual blend of romance meets epic fantasy. It is this like grand scale epic in terms of like world building and politics and maneuvering and stuff, while having a romance be a good 50-50 portion of it. Like, I do think it does the balance of fantasy romance quite well in my opinion, and I really truly adored it for that. We're following a world where there's Hesperians and humans, and the Hesperians are our vampire kind. Again, this is vampire romance, but the vampires are something different than what we're normally used to, but still have some of the classic things that vampires do have, such as blood drinking. In this, the Hesperians and the mortals have a truce and a deal that they've made thousands of years ago, and as each generation continues, they're supposed to redo this truce every time it ends in order to keep peace with their people. However, we have a king who wants war. We have a king who wants power and is greedy in the human world. They gather to redo this truce, but no one is quite sure how this is going to end. Insert Cassia and Leo. Cassia is the bastard daughter of the king, and in this world, females are not treated very well, and specifically someone like Cassia, who is born out of wedlock, she's really not treated well, even though she is the daughter of the king. We see a lot of her struggle within that, but also how powerful she is in her own right, as she sneaks away to meet Leo, who is a Hesperian diplomat. And the story is really about the two of them just learning about each other's species, because they're the first of the kind that each of them has met, and them just like falling in love and like the sweet moments they have, as well as this like overarching political maneuvering that is going on. And I just like, I don't know, this book just makes me smile. Like, I just really smile. That's all. If you haven't read this series, you probably should. And then we have Air Awakens by Elise Kova. This is a 5-book series, but they're all quite short. I would put this probably more as like YA fantasy than like a typical fantasy romance. Like, it's more like, to me, a YA fantasy that revolve around the romance, such as Twilight or even The Hunger Games or Divergent or Red Queen. Like, these series that like romance is so heavy because it is a big theme of young adults, and this kind of reminds me of that. However, I read it thinking it was a fantasy romance and it did not let me down, so I'm also putting it on a fantasy romance recommendation. This just has those familiar YA tropes, and it just is a fun ride. Don't go into this, I think, expecting anything new. I don't think that it is the most unique story in terms of like the romance and the tropes, but I do think the world building is very unique, and the characters are real characters, in my opinion, that feel very real and raw, and that is the unique elements to this. In this, we're following a library apprentice who, when the prince gets sick, she does everything in her power to heal him. Little does she know, there is a lot more in her power than she thought, and she ends up being told that she actually is a mage. in this world, anyone who has power is seen as like bad or evil, but they need sorcery in order to keep a dark entity and out of the world. Like, they do need the sorcery in order to survive. So although they are looked down upon, they're also just like wanted and needed. So they're kind of just like set to the side and people just pretend they don't exist. Sorcerers and humans don't really mingle. However, one of the princes is a sorcerer. Insert romance here. I really just loved the wild ride we went on this. I truly fell deeply in love with these characters. I bawled my eyes out during the series. I laughed with them. I had such a good time, and I really just enjoyed what this series was. I thought the magic was really cool. It's like an elemental based magic, and also like a bit of a chosen one and things like that. And we also just have a little bit of enemies to lovers banter in here, and just an overall like foreboding, because it's like a forbidden romance because they're not really supposed to be together. I really loved like the sneaking around and things like that, and I thought that this was quite a incredible series. I have read it all, and there is like a sequel series after. And the last one on this list I do not own physically, but I will be changing that at a Polycon, which is The Bridge Kingdom by Daniel L. Jensen. This was one of the first fantasy romances that I read and like went, this is what I like. Like, I want more of this. This one felt like a good amount of romance and fantasy to me. We're following enemies to lovers. We're literally like, it feels like real enemies to me. We're following our main character who has grown up literally just training for one thing and one thing only: to marry the prince of the rival nation and to kill him. And then we watch it go down. We watch her marry him, and you're just sitting there like, what in the world? This is gonna be an experience. Obviously, it's a fantasy romance, but I think it's a whirlwind experience, and the world building in this was really cool to me. I liked the idea of a island nation and what that meant. The Bridge Kingdom. That's why it's called the Bridge Kingdom. It's all on an island, and you can only get to it from boats and a bridge. And also, I like to see the ruthlessness of the king. I thought that the things the king did was extreme and really left you feeling for the other characters in a lot of ways, and I loved this one. Again, I think it has just like a really good amount of banter and comfort and familiar tropes and unique things. I definitely have a type, okay? Like, if you love banter in your books, me too. Like, literally me too. It's what I look for, is like good banter, because I love a relationship where people are like laughing together and having fun, and like, I don't know, I just like really, really love that, and that's like one of my main things that I look for in fantasy romance. So there you have it, all 5 romance recommendations from me. They're all incredible. I hope that you pick some up. If you have any that you think I would like, let me know down below. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a bridge emoji. I think that there's one of like a picture with like I think the San Francisco Bridge is in one. And then if you want to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.